Hi everyone, hope you're having a good day. So today's video is going to be on the GoPro Hero 9 and how to get great looking footage underwater with it. I've personally used the Hero 9 now for a couple months and I'm pretty happy with how the footage is turning out. I'm going to show you some of the tips that I use to get the footage and also talk more in detail about the settings and why I use these settings. Whenever I'm filming underwater, I usually change the settings depending on the situation. So instead of just listing out the settings that I usually do in the videos, I thought I'd explain each one so that you guys can adjust the settings yourself depending on the condition and hopefully get great looking footage with the GoPro underwater. Put up right now what I'm going to cover, so if you're interested in certain parts of the video you can skip ahead to there, and if not, let's get right into it. I'm going to start off by going through the settings that I'm using right now on the Hero 9. And I think I'm just going to go through all of them from top to bottom and just talk about them very quickly. Go for the resolution and the frame rate. You want the resolution to be at the highest that your laptop or PC can edit. If possible, you want to be filming with the Hero 9 at the 5K 30 frames for general footage. The only time I would change that is if I'm recording faster moving animals and I want some slow motion, then maybe I'd want higher frame rates. So maybe I would go down to 4K 60 frames. Or if I want ultra slow motion, then I'm going to go down to the 2.7K and 120 frames.
Memories die out too hard. And we were traveling the mountains just to find the loudest seas. We set down by the fire, knowing we could aim higher, but we didn't know.
Bitrate, you pretty much always want to have it on high, as it's the amount of data that gets transferred when you're transferring the videos. So I always have mine set on high. And then we're going to go to the hyper smooth next. The hyper smooth, I pretty much always have it on boost mode whenever I'm on the water, because it's very hard to keep your video stable when there's waves and currents. So it's best to have the higher stabilization mode on, as it gives you some pretty smooth footage overall. Now on to one of the more important settings, which is the ISO. There's a minimum value and the maximum value which you can set on the GoPro. In general, you want to have the minimum and maximum value as low as possible for the ISO, as lower ISO values mean you have less noise in your video. If the condition is perfectly sunny and the water is very clear, then I would have the ISO minimum set to 100 and the maximum set to 200. If it's slightly cloudy and it's overcast, then I would have the minimum value at 100 and the maximum value at maybe 400 or 800 depending on how dark it is. And if you're going night diving or snorkeling at night time, then maybe I would have the minimum value at 400 and the maximum value at 1600. But your footage is going to be very grainy and I wouldn't recommend shooting a low light condition. Next up is, for the sharpness, I'd have it either set on low or medium. The reason why is that once you have your GoPro footage imported into a program, it's easier to sharpen the footage. Whereas if you have the sharpness set on high, it's very hard to unsharpen the footage. So it's always best to shoot in low or medium settings for that. Now for the white balance, I usually like to leave it at 4.5K or 5K. Just try to stay away from the auto settings. And then finally for the shutter speed, I have mine set to auto. And the reason why is because the conditions underwater change pretty fast. So I usually let the GoPro choose for me because I can't really change the settings whilst I'm underwater. So the final setting I'm going to talk about is the color settings. You can either shoot in flat settings or the GoPro color settings. If you want to use the footage straight out of the camera, then you want to shoot in GoPro color, where the footage is already going to be saturated and contrasted for you by the GoPro. If you want to edit the footage yourself and color grade it yourself, then you want to shoot in flat settings so you'll have more flexibility in post-production to edit it. In order to get the best looking underwater footage, you want to have good lighting, and you also want to consider the position of the lighting relative to your subject, whether the subject is like a turtle or a shark or a dolphin. You always want to have the sunlight behind you and the subject in front of you, to get the best lighting for your video.
Memories die out too hard. And we were traveling long tales just to find the loudest tease. We said no matter fire.
On the other hand, if you have the sunlight behind the subject, then all you're going to get is a silhouette, which kind of looks cool in certain situations, but most of the time you're not going to want this kind of footage. So always try to shoot by being in between the sunlight and the subject. The next tip's going to sound kind of weird, but it's going to be to lick your lens before going into the water. And what this does is it coats the surface of the lens with a small barrier, and it stops water droplets from coming onto the lens. And this is important when you're going from underwater to above water on the same clip. It stops the water droplets from blocking out the above water scene. And also if you're shooting like half above water and half underwater, you don't want droplets to be on the top half. So that's why it's important to lick the screen if you're lick the lens, sorry, if you're going to be shooting that kind of photo. If my GoPro into the water, I personally don't use a housing or a filter. The main reason why is because I usually take my videos and photos closer to the surface, so there's no need for me to get a protective housing if I'm not diving deep. If you're going to go scuba diving, then I definitely recommend getting the housing, or otherwise you're going to get water leakage in your GoPro. What I do take with me though is always this floaty mount or the three-way mount from the GoPro, and it's just a lot easier to hold and stabilize your footage if you have a mount. And also you don't have to get as close to your subject to get a nice video, so it's also nicer for the animals too. I personally don't use the lens filter, the red filters at all, because I prefer to color grade my footage in DaVinci Resolve myself, and also because I shoot primarily near the surface, the red colors aren't lost too much. Now my final tip, which I think makes the biggest difference, is color grading your footage once you actually import the footage into your computer. I think that this makes the biggest difference between the regular footage on the GoPro and the nice looking footage on the GoPro. So I have a lot of tutorials on my channel, which I'm going to link in the description below if you want to learn how to do this. And I'm just going to show you the before and after of ungraded footage and graded footage.
Traveling long tales just to find the loudest tease. We said no matter fire, no, we could aim higher, but we didn't know that yet. So if you want something to hold on to, gotta find.
That's about it for this video, so thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing if it helped you out. If you have any questions related to the GoPro or underwater filming in general, then please let me know in the comments below. And as always, I will see you in the next video.